When a royal couple known for their united front against the world suddenly appears thousands of miles apart, living separate lives, the world takes notice. For years, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have positioned themselves as partners in revolution, two souls bound together against an institution they claim tried to destroy them. But recent events have revealed cracks in the foundation of their carefully curated image, cracks that started with a single, explosive disagreement about Netflix. What really happened behind closed doors when cameras stopped rolling? What did this once inseparable couple really want from each other, from fame, from their carefully orchestrated exit from royal life? Join us as we uncover the truth behind the marriage that captivated millions and the streaming deal that may have torn it apart. It all began quietly, almost unnoticed amid the chaos of their multi-million-dollar media empire. In late 2024, sources close to the couple began whispering to tabloids about tension brewing in their Montecito mansion. The catalyst, insiders revealed, was a fundamental disagreement about their Netflix documentary series. Harry, according to these sources, had wanted to pull back to protect what remained of his private life and his fragile relationship with his family across the Atlantic. Meghan, they claimed, pushed forward, seeing the platform as essential to their brand, their relevance, their very survival in the brutal ecosystem of celebrity culture they'd chosen to inhabit. The revelation came not through official channels or carefully planned interviews, but through the couple's own behavior. Observers noted that by December 2024, Harry and Meghan were rarely seen together. He appeared at charity events alone. She attended Hollywood functions without him. Their social media, once filled with coordinated posts showing unity and shared purpose, became tellingly separate. Royal correspondent Valentine Lowe noted in an interview, "What we're seeing is a couple who built their entire post-royal identity on being a team, suddenly operating as individuals. That's not just a change in strategy, that's fundamental." Body language experts analyzing their final joint appearances before the separation pointed to telling signs. Meghan's hand would reach for Harry's, only to be met with stiffness rather than the warm interlacing of fingers the public had come to expect. Harry's eyes, once constantly seeking Meghan's approval and connection during public events, now drifted elsewhere, unfocused, distant. Judy James, a leading body language analyst, observed, "The tactile couple who couldn't keep their hands off each other have become two people who look uncomfortable even standing side by side. Something has shifted, and it's profound. But to understand how they arrived at this breaking point, we must journey back to where it all began." July 8, 1997 stands as one of the most significant dates in Prince Harry's life, though not for reasons of celebration. On that day, his mother, Princess Diana, gave her final interview to Le Monde newspaper, just weeks before her tragic death in a Paris tunnel. In that interview, she spoke about her sons, about her hopes for Harry especially. "My wish is that my sons should have freedom," she said. Freedom to make their own choices, to marry for love, to live authentically. Those words would echo through Harry's life, shaping every major decision he would make, including the most consequential one, choosing Meghan Markle. When Harry first met Meghan on a blind date in July 2016, he was a prince still trapped in the machinery of royal duty but desperate for the freedom his mother had wished for him. Meghan was a television actress, known but not famous, successful but hungry for more. Their courtship was a whirlwind, conducted in secret initially, then thrust into the harsh glare of media scrutiny that Harry both courted and resented. By November 8, 2016, just months after their first meeting, Harry took the unprecedented step of releasing a statement defending Meghan against press intrusion, declaring her his girlfriend and warning the media to back off. It was protective, passionate, and precisely the kind of rule-breaking his mother might have approved of. Their engagement, announced on November 27, 2017, seemed like a fairy tale for the modern age. A biracial American actress joining the ancient British monarchy represented progress, evolution, hope. But royal biographer Andrew Morton, who had chronicled Diana's struggles, saw warning signs even then. Harry was absolutely besotted, Morton observed in a 2023 interview. But there was also this quality of rescue about it. He wasn't just marrying Meghan, he was saving her from what had happened to his mother. That's a heavy burden to place on any marriage. The wedding on May 19, 2018 was spectacular, a blend of British tradition and modern flourishes that reflected Meghan's influence. An African-American bishop delivered a passionate sermon about love. A gospel choir sang. Meghan walked part of the aisle alone, a statement of independence. Harry, waiting at the altar, had tears in his eyes. In that moment, they looked like two people who had found their refuge in each other, their fortress against the world. A palace aide who worked closely with the couple during this period recalled, "They were intensely devoted to each other, almost to the exclusion of everyone else." Staff would brief Harry on important matters, and he'd immediately turn to Meghan, as if her opinion was the only one that mattered. It was romantic, but it also made working with them incredibly challenging. But was Harry really the driving force behind their eventual departure from royal life? Or was he, as some have suggested, a man caught between two worlds, unable to satisfy either? Let's take a closer look at the dynamics that shaped their marriage and ultimately led to the crisis we're witnessing today. The relationship between Harry and Meghan operated on a unique dynamic from the very beginning. Harry, the spare heir who had lived in his brother's shadow, found in Meghan someone who saw him as the main character of his own story. She was confident where he was uncertain, ambitious where he was aimless, strategic where he was impulsive. Friends from Harry's past noticed the change immediately. One polo-playing companion told the Sunday Times, "Harry went from being one of the lads to being completely consumed by this relationship. He stopped returning calls, dropped out of our regular games." It wasn't controlling from her side, not exactly. It was Harry choosing her world over his own, and doing it gladly. Meghan brought Hollywood sensibility to Windsor Castle. She understood branding, image management, social media engagement in ways the dusty palace communications office never could. When they launched their Instagram account in April 2019, it gained 1 million followers faster than any account in history at that time. Meghan knew how to craft a narrative, how to position them not just as royals but as activists, change makers, voices for the marginalized. Harry, who had struggled to find purpose beyond his military service, embraced this new identity with the fervor of the converted. Yet beneath the glossy Instagram posts and carefully orchestrated appearances, tension was building. The British press, never kind to outsiders, began a sustained campaign against Meghan that Harry found unbearable. He saw his wife being subjected to the same treatment that had hounded his mother, and the trauma of Diana's death came flooding back. Royal protection officers who worked with the couple during this period noted Harry's increasing paranoia about Meghan's safety. One officer, speaking anonymously to a documentary crew, revealed, "He would wake up in the middle of the night in a panic, checking security systems, demanding we change protocols." He was reliving his mother's death through Meghan's experience, and it was destroying him. Meghan, meanwhile, struggled with the suffocating nature of royal protocol. A former member of her staff recalled a telling incident. She wanted to go to lunch with a friend in London, just a casual meal. When she realized it required coordinating with police, notifying the palace, potentially having photographers follow her, she broke down in tears. She kept saying, "I just want to be normal." But normal wasn't an option, and I don't think she fully understood that when she married into the family. The couple's relationship with Harry's family deteriorated rapidly. William, once Harry's closest confidant, expressed concerns about the speed of the relationship and Meghan's suitability for royal life. Harry interpreted this as betrayal, racism, jealousy. The brothers who had walked behind their mother's coffin together, who had supported each other through unimaginable grief, became strangers. Kate, the Duchess of Cambridge, tried to mentor Meghan in the ways of royal life, but Meghan saw this as condescension. A bridesmaid dress fitting before the wedding ended in tears, with conflicting accounts of who had upset whom. These weren't just small family squabbles. They were fractures in relationships that would never fully heal. Throughout 2019, as Meghan and Harry's first child Archie was born on May 6th, the couple began seriously discussing an exit strategy. They weren't happy. The press was relentless. The palace, they felt, wasn't protecting them. But more than that, they had a vision for what they could become outside the royal structure, a vision that was quintessentially Meghan's but that Harry had wholly adopted. They would be financially independent royals, mixing charity work with lucrative media deals, living in America but keeping their titles and some official duties. It was naive, unprecedented, and destined to explode spectacularly. The explosion came on January 8, 2020, when Harry and Meghan announced via Instagram that they were stepping back as senior royals. They hadn't consulted the Queen, they hadn't coordinated with palace communications. They simply declared their independence, shocking the royal family and the world. The response was swift and decisive. Queen Elizabeth summoned Harry to Sandringham for crisis talks. The meeting, attended by Charles, William, and Harry, without Meghan, resulted in a hard line. They could leave royal life, but they couldn't be half in, half out. No royal duties meant no royal funding, no use of HRH titles in commercial ventures, no cherry-picking the benefits without the burdens. Harry and Meghan's first major interview after leaving royal life came on March 7, 2021, with Oprah Winfrey. Watched by 17.1 million viewers in the United States alone, the interview was devastating in its allegations. Meghan spoke of suicidal thoughts while pregnant, of being denied help by Palace HR. She revealed that an unnamed family member had expressed concerns about how dark Archie's skin might be. Harry described being financially cut off, trapped in a system he couldn't escape without Meghan's support. "I would not have been able to leave without her," Harry confessed to Oprah. "She gave me the courage to break free from a life that was killing me." It was powerful, unfiltered, and deeply damaging to the royal family's reputation. But the Oprah interview also marked a turning point in how the public perceived Harry and Meghan. For some, they were brave truth-tellers exposing institutional racism and callousness. For others, they were opportunistic celebrities using royal trauma to build their brand. The polarization was total, and it placed enormous pressure on their marriage. They needed each other to be right. If one doubted the narrative they'd built, if one questioned whether leaving was worth the cost, the entire structure of their new life would collapse. Enter Netflix. In September 2020, just months after officially leaving royal duties, Harry and Meghan signed a reported $100 million deal with the streaming giant. The agreement promised documentaries, scripted series, children's programming, all produced under their production company Archewell. It was validation, financial security, and a platform to control their own story. But it was also a Faustian bargain that would require them to continually feed the machine, to provide content, drama, intimate revelations to justify the enormous investment Netflix had made. Their first major production was the documentary series Harry and Meghan, released in December 2022. It was slick, well-produced, and deeply personal, featuring home videos, private photographs, and candid reflections on their love story and their break from the royals. Harry appeared raw and vulnerable, discussing his mental health struggles and his fear of losing Meghan the way he'd lost his mother. Meghan positioned herself as a woman who'd been naive about what joining the royal family would mean, who'd suffered racial abuse and institutional betrayal. The series was a massive hit for Netflix, generating enormous viewership and dominating cultural conversation for weeks. But behind the scenes, according to sources close to the production, the process of making the documentary had been grueling and divisive. Harry reportedly had second thoughts about including certain footage, particularly scenes involving his children and discussions about specific family members. Meghan, more comfortable with the camera and more convinced of the necessity of controlling their narrative, pushed for maximum transparency. One production insider revealed to The Telegraph, "There were several heated discussions about what footage to include." Harry would say, "This feels like we're exploiting our pain." Meghan would counter that they needed to tell the full story or not tell it at all. The creative tension was immense. After the documentary's success, Netflix wanted more. They proposed follow-up series, deeper dives into specific controversies, perhaps even a reality-style show following their daily life in Montecito. This is where, according to multiple sources, the fundamental disagreement erupted. Harry, having achieved the financial security and platform he sought, wanted to pull back. He'd made his point. He'd told his truth. Now, he wanted to focus on quieter charity work, on being present for his children Archie and Lilibet, on perhaps even attempting some kind of reconciliation with his family. The constant excavation of trauma, the endless cycle of revelation and reaction, was exhausting him. Meghan saw it differently. To her, stepping back from Netflix meant becoming irrelevant. In Hollywood, you're only as valuable as your last project, and maintaining their celebrity status required constant engagement. She also believed, according to friends, that they had a responsibility to continue speaking out, that their platform could create real change on issues of mental health, racial justice, and institutional accountability. Royal commentator Tom Bower, who has written critically about the couple, noted, "Meghan came from a world where you hustle constantly or you disappear. Harry came from a world where discretion is valued above exposure. That fundamental difference was always going to cause problems." The Netflix disagreement became a proxy war for deeper issues in their marriage. It represented competing visions of their future, different comfort levels with public exposure, and ultimately, different answers to the question of who they really were. Were they activists using their platform for good, celebrities chasing relevance, victims sharing their trauma, or some complicated mixture of all three that neither could fully articulate even to each other? By mid-2024, the strain was impossible to hide. Meghan threw herself into new projects, launching a lifestyle brand and podcast, attending Hollywood events, networking with power players in entertainment and politics. Harry, meanwhile, seemed to withdraw. He made solo trips to England for charity work, reconnected with old military friends, and spent long periods at their home while Meghan traveled. Photos from this period tell the story more honestly than any official statement. At a charity polo match in August 2024, Harry looked gaunt and distracted, barely smiling even when his team won. At a film premiere that same month, Meghan glowed on the red carpet, but observers noted she attended alone, her hand unconsciously touching her ring finger as if checking the wedding band was still there. The couple's separate professional pursuits accelerated the drift. Meghan signed with a major Hollywood talent agency in September 2024, a move that signaled serious acting and producing ambitions. Harry, in a seemingly contradictory move, began quietly reaching out through intermediaries to his father, King Charles, exploring possibilities for limited reconciliation. These weren't necessarily incompatible goals, but they pointed in opposite directions. Meghan was becoming more American, more Hollywood, more focused on building an entertainment empire. Harry was still, in some fundamental way, a Windsor, a royal, a man whose identity was tied to the institution he'd fled. Royal historian Dr. Ed Owens observed, "Harry's tragedy is that he thought leaving the royal family would free him, but you can't simply resign from who you are." He remains Prince Henry Charles Albert David, son of Diana, grandson of Elizabeth, brother of the future king. That's not a job title, that's an identity. Meghan could walk away from the royals because she was never truly one of them. Harry can't, and I think he's realized that. The public began to notice the separation not through any official announcement, but through the couple's absence from each other's lives. Thanksgiving 2024 came and went with no family photo. Unusual for a couple who had previously shared such moments on social media, Christmas was equally silent. By January 2025, tabloids were openly speculating about marital problems. Though representatives for the couple continued to insist everything was fine, that they were simply pursuing individual projects while remaining committed to their shared values and family. But those close to the situation paint a different picture. A former staff member who left Archewell in late 2024 told Vanity Fair, "The vibe in the office changed completely. It used to be Harry and Meghan want this or Harry and Meghan decided that. By the end, it was Meghan's team thinks versus Harry's team thinks. They'd effectively split into factions within their own organization. You could feel the marriage falling apart in the staff meetings." Even in absence of official confirmation, the evidence mounted. Harry was spotted house hunting in areas of California far from Montecito, looking at properties that seemed suited for a single person rather than a family. Meghan was photographed having intimate dinners with Hollywood executives and old friends from her acting days, conversations that lasted hours and ended with lingering hugs that suggested she was seeking emotional support outside her marriage. Their children, Archie and Lilibet, became pawns in a careful PR game, with both parents making sure to be photographed on school runs and at parks, proving their parental devotion even as their spousal relationship crumbled. The voice of their discontent lived on in the very documentaries and interviews they'd created. Watch the Netflix series again with knowledge of their current situation, and the cracks appear obvious. Harry's discomfort during certain revelations, the way his eyes dart away from the camera when discussing family estrangement. Meghan's steely determination, her absolute certainty that they'd made the right choice, a certainty Harry never quite seemed to share. They were telling their story together while wanting fundamentally different things from the telling. Friends of the couple have begun speaking more openly, though still anonymously, about the fundamental incompatibility they'd observed. One close friend told People magazine, "Meghan is a fighter. When she faces criticism or obstacles, she pushes harder, speaks louder, demands to be heard. Harry, for all his public bravado, is more fragile. The constant warfare with the press, with his family, with public opinion, it's broken something in him. He just wants peace. And peace isn't something Meghan knows how to accept when she feels they've been wronged." Another dimension to their marital strain involves their different relationships with fame. Meghan, having pursued acting since childhood, understood fame as a tool, something to be leveraged and managed strategically. Harry was born famous, trapped by it, seeing it as both his birthright and his prison. Where Meghan saw a podcast or public appearance as an opportunity to build their brand, Harry increasingly saw it as an exhausting performance required by their exile. The very thing that gave Meghan energy drained Harry completely. The financial pressure of maintaining their lifestyle also cannot be ignored. The Montecito mansion, purchased for $14.65 million, requires substantial upkeep. Their security costs, no longer covered by the royal family or British taxpayers, run into millions annually. The staff, the travel, the maintaining of appearances in one of America's most expensive zip codes all require constant income. The Netflix deal, lucrative as it was, came with deliverable requirements. When Harry wanted to stop producing content, it wasn't just a creative disagreement. It threatened their financial foundation. Some observers have suggested that Meghan's upbringing, marked by financial instability and her parents' divorce, made her especially anxious about money in ways Harry, who'd never worried about paying bills, couldn't understand. Royal biographer Tina Brown noted, "Harry seems to believe that having enough to live comfortably should be sufficient. Meghan knows from experience that enough can disappear overnight. She wants security, multiple income streams, investments in their future. That's not greed, that's survival instinct. And it's completely at odds with Harry's more aristocratic view of money." The couple's therapist, whose existence they'd mentioned in interviews but whose identity remained confidential, reportedly tried to help them navigate these fundamental differences. But therapy can only work when both partners are fully committed to staying together, and by late 2024, sources suggest that commitment was wavering. Harry had reportedly begun asking questions about what custody arrangements might look like, what returning to England more permanently might mean for his children. Meghan, meanwhile, was consulting with legal advisors about protecting her business interests and maintaining her American life. The most heartbreaking aspect of their unraveling is how preventable it might have been. If they'd moved more slowly into the media deals, if they'd prioritized their marriage over their platform, if they'd been more honest with each other about their doubts and fears rather than presenting a united front to the world while fracturing privately. But that would have required a level of self-awareness and compromise that two traumatized people, both convinced they'd finally found their path to happiness, simply couldn't achieve. Their children, Archie and Lilibet, represent both the strongest bond and the most complicated issue between them. Both Harry and Meghan are devoted parents, fiercely protective of their children's privacy and well-being, but they have different visions for how those children should be raised. Harry wants them to have some connection to their royal heritage, to know their cousins George, Charlotte, and Louis, to understand the history they're part of. Meghan worries about exposing them to the institution that she believes damaged her so profoundly, about the racism and press intrusion they might face. A particularly telling incident occurred in summer 2024, when Harry wanted to bring Archie to England for a brief visit to meet King Charles, who'd expressed deep sadness at being estranged from his grandchildren. Meghan reportedly refused, fearing for Archie's safety and unwilling to expose him to the British press. The disagreement, according to sources, lasted weeks and ended without resolution. Harry made the trip alone, met with his father briefly, and returned to California more dejected than when he'd left. It was a preview of the separate lives they were beginning to lead. Throughout this period of growing separation, both Harry and Meghan maintained public appearances suggesting everything was fine. They released statements through representatives celebrating their anniversary. They were photographed separately but described as busy with individual projects. This performance of marital stability while privately drifting apart is classic celebrity behavior, the same pattern seen in countless Hollywood divorces, where the official announcement comes years after the real relationship ended. The question that haunts their story is whether they ever truly knew each other beyond the initial infatuation and shared sense of grievance against their respective circumstances. Harry saw Meghan as his salvation, the strong woman who would succeed where his mother had failed, who would survive the institution and take him with her. Meghan saw Harry as her fairy tale, the ultimate validation that she was special, chosen, worthy of a prince's love. But salvation and validation aren't sustainable foundations for marriage. Eventually, you have to see each other as flawed humans with incompatible needs, and you have to decide if love is enough to bridge those gaps. For Harry and Meghan, surrounded by yes people and isolated in their Montecito bubble, that reckoning came too late. By the time they recognized their fundamental incompatibility, they'd burned too many bridges, made too many public declarations of unity, invested too much in the narrative of their perfect partnership against the world. Admitting the marriage was failing felt like admitting their entire escape from royal life had been a mistake, and neither was ready to face that possibility. The legacy of Harry and Meghan's relationship will be debated for generations. To their supporters, they represent courage, the willingness to choose love and authenticity over duty and tradition. To their critics, they embody narcissism, a couple who wanted royal status without royal responsibility, who weaponized their pain for profit while claiming to seek privacy. The truth, as always, is more complex than either narrative allows. What remains undeniable is that two people who seemed desperately in love, who promised to protect each other from the forces that had harmed them, have ended up in separate worlds of their own creation. Harry, the prince who wanted freedom, finds himself freer than ever, but also more lost, untethered from family and country, and increasingly from his wife. Meghan, the actress who wanted to be seen as more than her role, has achieved fame beyond her wildest dreams, but at the cost of the intimate partnership that made it all possible. Even in the absence of divorce papers or official statements of separation, their marriage exists now primarily as a public relations exercise. They coordinate appearances around their children. They release carefully worded statements about shared values. But the passionate connection, the mutual devotion, the sense of being each other's refuge against a hostile world, those have faded into memory, replaced by the exhausting work of maintaining an illusion for a public that can increasingly see through it. Their voice lived on in the very public way they'd chosen to live their lives. Every interview, every documentary, every carefully curated Instagram post had been designed to control their narrative, to make sure their truth was told on their terms. But in doing so, they'd created a public record of their relationship that couldn't be erased or rewritten. The Netflix series, meant to vindicate their choices, now serves as a time capsule of a marriage in its final throes. Two people convinced they were united while already beginning to pull apart. The final irony of Harry and Meghan's story is that in fleeing an institution they found suffocating, they built their own prison of public expectation and financial obligation. The freedom they sought turned out to be another form of captivity, and the partner they'd chosen as their liberator became a reminder of everything they'd sacrificed for a dream that couldn't sustain reality's weight. As 2025 unfolds, the world watches and waits for what both Harry and Meghan know is inevitable, a public acknowledgement of what their separate lives and separate ambitions have already made clear. Their marriage, like so many fairy tales, was beautiful in the telling but fragile in the living. And like all tragedies, the ending was visible from the beginning for anyone willing to look past the romance and see two people who wanted different futures but convinced themselves they wanted the same thing. What do you think went wrong between Harry and Meghan? Was their marriage doomed from the start, or did the pressures of their public life destroy something that could have survived in private? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this deep dive into their relationship compelling, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more royal family analysis. The story of Harry and Meghan isn't over yet, and we'll be here to uncover every chapter as it unfolds.